Alright, now in this question, we're going to be talking about the sex differences of the skull, okay? And that's going to be question number 23 from section A. Now, the way I'm going to try to explain this question to you guys is in a way that you can logically think this out, okay? And hopefully that way you guys will be able to remember or recall the actual specific differences between the male skull and the female skull, okay? Because during an exam, one can probably, say the basic differences of the skull, or maybe just the fact that the male skull is going to be bigger, larger, and thicker, okay, whilst the female skull is going to be smaller, lighter, and thinner, okay? But at least in our university, Sark University, I'm going to be pretty sure that the professors are going to look for more detail, okay? So therefore, I'm going to name you guys 7 differences between the male and the female skull, okay? So I think the best way to remember the actual differences, okay, is first start from the top of the sphygmocranium cranium, okay? Now, from the top of the sphygmocranium cranium, or I guess on the frontal bone, you have the male forehead, okay? Now, the male forehead, okay, compared to the female forehead, is going to be more flat, okay? Whereas the female head is going to be more round, okay? Now, that's going to be your first difference, okay? But your first difference is going to relate with the second difference. The fact that the males have a flat forehead, their nasofrontal transition is going to be more prominent, okay? Whereas the female forehead is going to be more round, it's going to lightly transition into the nasofrontal area, okay? So that's the second difference. The nasofrontal transition is that the males have a greater transition, while the females have a lighter nasofrontal transition, okay? Now, the third difference is the fact that the males have larger superciliary arches, and the superciliary arches are going to be the area above the supraorbital margin, okay? And you guys know from basic osteology that in between the superciliary arches you're going to have the glabella, which is a craniometric point, okay? Now, so we have 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to talk about the fourth difference. The fourth difference from the male skull and the female skull is that the males have a more square and a smaller orbit, while the females have a larger orbit and is going to be more round, okay? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And our fifth difference is going to be about the zygomatic arch. Now in the males, you're going to have a more prominent and protruding arch, okay? While in the females, the zygomatic arch is going to be less protruding and less prominent, okay? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we go to the angle of the mandible. Now, if you guys remember, the angle of the mandible divides the ramus and the body of the ramus and body of the mandible. And in the angle of the mandible, as you can see right here, this angle right here is going to be quite sharp in the males, okay? Whereas in the females, the angle is going to be more round and obtuse, okay? A larger angle, okay? Now, our last difference between the male and female skull, or the last major difference, is going to be the fact that the males have bigger foramina, whereas the females have smaller foramina, okay? And guys, that's going to sum up the major differences, or specific major differences, between the male skull and the female skull. And don't forget the basics, obviously, that the male skull is going to be heavier, it's going to be thicker, and it's just in general going to be longer in almost every aspect, okay? And most of the structures of the male skull are going to be more protruding or more prominent, okay? Whereas in the females, it's the exact opposite, okay? So those will be important differences to list out during your examination. Okay.